um, what actually happened. But I wonder if they're doing that so that their bluff doesn't get called and they don't have to escalate. They kind of drew a line in the sand, and Ukraine just crossed it. And I think they're
Yeah,
cowards.
that's what Thomas said today. That's the whole conversation we had. The reason why, so people ask, then why not just say it's attacking? So it's very simple, because Putin has said he will do this, or this will be an escalation, meaning he has to respond if ATACMS are sent to Ukraine. I will say this, and I'm 100% sure ATACMS were sent to Ukraine in midsummer. They were not to be used on Russia, but they could be used in Crimea, and they had to be signed off every time they're used by the Americans, by certain organizations within the Pentagon that coordinate this stuff with the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military, and they're used sparingly. And the idea is not to acknowledge you used ATACMS. They could get away with some of it because of they could have them further back in Ukraine and fire them, or in this one they put it at the forward edge of the battle space there, and they fired it. Obviously, everyone said, no, it's only 300 kilometers too hard. Okay, that's because it says it on Wikipedia. The man who wrote the Wikipedia entry, pretty much, who's an expert in it, pretty much said those numbers aren't true. He didn't say what. Let's leave it at that. So you can imagine, and also the range and how these missiles work are not like normal missiles. So imagine a rocket ship, how it moves, and then imagine a rocket ship firing right back down into the earth. So no time for air defense. They're not used to those things. Having said that, obviously the simplest answer is it was ATACMS, because this could do all of the things with the least amount of friction. And again, why would he not say it? First of all, it's embarrassing. They've talked about how their bridge is indestructible and protected. They have an entire brigade. They got 5,000 troops that their only job is to protect the bridge. They've got naval assets that every hour or every 2 hours go by different parts of the bridge, or all of the bridge, the length of the bridge, to inspect it. No one's hiding on the bridge. No one's dropping, C4 or explosive material and collating it and making shaped charges in different places on a busy road. The Russians are supremely embarrassed by it. Number one. Number two, if they admit to their own people or to the public that they know it's an ATACMS, it means that they now have to escalate. So this goes to your nuclear question, whoever's going to ask it next. That's how you know he doesn't want a nuclear war, because he has every excuse since Saki to do it. He drew a red line. He made an imaginary line in the sand and said, "You will not pass that." The Ukrainians passed it. He didn't do anything. Same thing with Saki. It's special force operation. Blah 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 blah. Even the Ukrainians went along with it, and then a couple months later, they said, "Yeah, it was a missile strike." Big question mark. What kind was it? So the Ukrainians are more than happy to entertain his little delusion, because it also doesn't allow them to show their hand. It doesn't allow them, that keeps the enemy guessing to a degree, or keeps other enemies guessing. And as the Russians are concerned, they're not forced to escalate, because no one's saying it's an ATACMS. If he wanted to escalate, Russians don't need reality to make up stories to murder or kill or invade. I mean, they started with a Jewish neo-Nazi president whose family died in the Holocaust. That's how they started. So we obviously know that nothing really, facts don't matter, reality doesn't matter. But in this particular case, they have the proof. They know that ATACMS hit Saki and the bridge, but they're not saying that it's ATACMS. So they obviously are not trying to escalate. They want to get as much from the world and Ukraine as possible without committing or actually taking that risk to go up the escalatory ladder. Because they're frauds. They are playing chicken, and they're playing chicken with Ukraine, but they can't play chicken with the United States, and they know it. They absolutely know it. Why did they? I think the real questions here are why was the Kerch Bridge attacked yesterday? Number one, what's next from the Russians? What's next from the Ukrainians? These are really, and why one lane? I think those are all legitimate questions. I just feel that we go backwards, and I guess I got some messages. You sound really snarky. It's a passive aggressive Canadian thing, and I'm really sorry you feel that way. I did it again. But the reality is, there are really important questions to ask, and I think I'd love to address those questions, because I think that's, at the end of the day, the effect, the delivered effect, is really super important. And I think it's clear the Russians aren't looking, they thought they could go toe to toe or destroy Ukraine. and now they're losing miserably. There's no way in hell they think that starting with the United States or Great Britain or whoever is going to be a winning proposition. So they will always deny the things that are convenient to them, even though they know what it is. And once I suspect, I wasn't a fly on the wall, but I suspect that once the Russians started with the truck bomb road here, all they did was show you a video of CCT at like a truck inspection station of a truck, and then they showed you the CCTV from the bridge. I don't even know if it's the same truck. Who really cares, right? It's so Mickey Mouse. And then all these stupid IDs. I don't even know what's fake or one of these joke memes with the ID. I have no idea who's who anymore, but it doesn't even matter. So at that point, you had the Ukrainians. Maybe the Americans even say, "Hey, gin it up a bit here. Why don't you start leaking to the New York Times that in fact it was a special forces operation?" And they did it. I mean, that's what's going around all Ukraine right now. Everyone thinks it's special forces. No one's really thought about it to put it together. And again, look at the picture of the deck underneath the bridge. Look at the hole or parts of it. Look at the lack of debris. Gunny was right. A bomb with a ton of explosives. It's like a confetti party, but instead of confetti, it's bits of metal and flesh and bits and bobs. And you'd see it everywhere, all over, everywhere. It wouldn't look like that. There'd be pock marks in the asphalt of the where it collapsed down. It wouldn't look like a fresh road that just happens to be slanted down. So there's just bazillions of things I just don't want to get into. But hey, why'd they do it? Did they do it because of the nuclear saber rattling? Did they do it because of Liman? And covered bodies? And what's the reason they did it? These are the questions that I don't know the answers to. But anyway, I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I'm sorry I wasn't here for Thomas earlier. So thanks for rehashing it for me.
It was a great conversation. Alrighty. I don't know if Gunny wanted to jump in. I don't know who's next, but I think it was Brent's been up for. Brent's a trooper. He's been there for like 80 minutes.
So I just want to make the comment. I don't know if the debate itself is terribly helpful. I mean, the point of the strike, it was a legal strike. I mean, it was great military effect, little civilian damage, so proportionality was there. So the fact is, whatever tactic they used, it was a legal strike. What's not legal is doing a cruise missile into a residential area with no military target. So I occasionally go over and kind of listen to Russian propagandists talk about this, and to me, what they're going for is whataboutism. They're going for, well, Ukraine is a terrorist. Look, they use this tactic of a truck bomb on this bridge, and this is what terrorists do. So it's equivalency, and that to me is what they're driving for. And somewhat, I kind of feel like this debate is self-defeating because it makes it a question and it feeds into that narrative.
Agreed. I think the debate on at the end of the day, if it was an attack or it was a homemade Ukrainian missile, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's the effect that it caused. That's what's super important. The precision in cleaving away one section, not two, not three, one. I'm not an engineer, but I'd assume it's easier to fix one section as opposed to two. Maybe it's the same amount of work. I don't know. 2 for 1. But you're right. What it means is really important. And while we're up, I don't know who was next again. I think it was Gunny.
Yeah, I also think there's an embarrassment factor here as well. We think we know that there are S-300 batteries either end of the bridge. So figure probably something like pansiers dotted around both sides as well. A long-range air search radar. They probably had an airborne early warning radar up, and they probably had at least one combat air patrol up. So imagine in a wartime situation, 2 Caliber hitting the Golden Gate Bridge with Patriots at either side, CRAM, an E3 AWACS up, and 4 F-15s in 2 combat air patrols up threat. And yet still the bridge got whacked. So what you had was an exceptionally dense air defense network. Everyone should have been on maximum alert, and a weapon system penetrated that and flew into the bridge. So I think they're probably extremely embarrassed as well. And as Brent said, what's the best way to try and get the moral high ground? I mean, it's laughable to us, but again, this is propaganda aimed at the Russian public, not us, because they know that we piss our pants laughing. Look at the Ukrainians; they're terrorists. They used a suicide bomber, you know, to try and introduce all the connotations that the West takes on board with the term suicide bomber. Daesh, extremism, ideological madness, willing to sacrifice life for a cause, etc., etc. You know, and they push that at the same time as their mallet in apartment blocks. So to us, it's laughable. To them, it probably kind of makes sense, because in potato land, the population aren't particularly well informed or indeed bright, and they're stuck with an air defense system that yet again has simply proved to be incapable of detecting an ATACMS sized weapon system. And it's not the speed or the ballistics. It's probably just a simple case of radar cross section. Systems like ATACMS and GIMLARs, they've got a low radar cross section, and the radars just simply aren't picking them up. And for some reason, the optical backups aren't picking these things up. Therefore, their air defense is crap. Their airborne early warning radars aren't seeing them. Their fighters up in the air that should have been searchlighting with radars didn't see them. Long range search radar on the ground nothing saw them. So yeah, if that's the case, you're going to stick your hand up and go, "Damn you, nefarious Ukrainians with your super wonder weapons," or are you going to go, "It's a suicide bomber because the Ukrainians are terrorists"? You know, entirely predictable.
Gunny, how many orders do you think are in place every month or every year, to a Russian manufacturer of S-300s and S-400s from developing nations and would-be and wannabe dictators around the world? Can you imagine the impact on, which is one of the biggest industries, is their defense, is their weapons industry?